Hey everybody, I'm Mr. Terry, a high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video. All right, I've been asked to respond to more of the PragerU videos, and the one I wanted to check out today is actually a discussion that we have in class a lot. Because the title of this video is The Difference Between a Democracy and a Republic. Now, I see this discussion happening all the time in comment sections on the internet, but oftentimes those conversations are just a matter of semantics. So I'm looking forward to checking out what they have to say with it. And I'll also tell you what kind of I think and what kind of, happens in school curriculums usually when defining these terms. If you like what you see here, I'd love to have you as a sub. So hit that sub button so you can see all my videos, including some reactions to some other PragerU videos if you're into that too. All right, the original video link will be down below as well. All right, let's get started. Now, a lot of people believe that PragerU is kind of controversial, so I'm wondering if there is some kind of controversial take in this discussion, or if it's just about defining terms. Again, I'll let you know what I think. Let's check this out.
At the close of the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, legend has it that a woman called out to Benjamin Franklin to ask what kind of government the delegates had created. Franklin responded, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." A republic? Shouldn't Franklin have said a democracy? Isn't that?
Now, right away, I'll just kind of insert in that a lot of people use democracy as a kind of an umbrella term. And one of the most common things you'll see in comment sections on political argues and stuff is, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And then go ahead and look for comments like this. And then a reply to that will always be, republic is a form of democracy. And it's just like, it's where I was saying it's semantics. It's just arguing about what words mean.
What we have in the United States? Most people today would say yes. After all, if our country isn't a democracy, what is it? It's not a dictatorship, the rule of one man, or an oligarchy ruled by a small group. In America,
some people would argue that
in charge. That's literally what democracy means. In the original, in America, the people are in charge. That's literally what democracy means in the original Greek.
Sure.
Demos, kratos, the people, demos, rule. Kratos.
This is actually getting into things I would have interjected with.
Let's pause for a moment and consider more deeply what the word means in practice and why the delegates in Philadelphia rejected it.
Now, I'm hoping a term that gets used here, and I don't know if it is, it would have been a really good time to already interject it, is, first off, very few Greek states were democracies of any form. Very few. Usually what people are thinking of is Athens. And Athens, actually only for a short time period. This sort of golden age of Athenian democracy will only last about 50 years, kind of in response to the Persian War, where one of the things that they had people vote on is if the people should, give in to the Persians and basically accept their terms or fight, and had like a vote, right? Yes or no. And then after the war, it kind of expanded a little bit under Pericles, Athenian statesman. And that was a term, a direct democracy. Now, that is a term I was wishing, hopefully they would have inserted right there. Direct democracy means the people, okay, are the ones that are going to decide even day-to-day issues of a state, right? Now, Athens had maybe around 250,000 people or so in it at that time, but only about 15% of people actually participated in the democracy, because you had to be of a certain age, you had to be a male, you had to be born in Athens as well. There's numerous things you had to be required to do. But anyway, yeah, if they're referring to Athens, it was a direct democracy. And we'll see when they get to the republic talk, because the republic is quite different.
That's right, rejected it. Our government was established by a national charter, the Constitution of the United States. We are governed by the institutions and according to the rules and principles created and adopted when our forebears ratified that document, making it the supreme law of the land. Are those institutions, properly speaking, democratic? The men who bequeathed our form of government to us, those we call our...
in the sense that not all of our institutions are voted on by the people. Sometimes they are appointed by people that we have voted. So not everything is directly... directly, voted on. That's why it's good. We should be using the term direct democracy more, right? In a republic, they're going to get to it, is a system where we elect people who make laws and make day-to-day decisions for us. Kind of an intermediary, if you would say.
Founding fathers didn't see it that way. They understood the institutions established by the Constitution to be republican. In fact, Though the founders believed in government of the people, by the people, for the people, as Abraham Lincoln put it in the Gettysburg Address, they did not believe in pure or unrestricted democracy.
Sure. It's actually a lot more like Rome, okay, before the empire. The American system of government, much more like Republic Rome than it ever was at any city-state in Athenian history ever.
They feared that democracy, strictly speaking, contained within it the impulse to mob rule, the stifling of civil liberty, the trampling by majorities of the rights of minorities.
Right.
To put it more bluntly, pure democracy frightened them.
The idea that 51% can take away the rights of 49%, right? With that thin of a margin potentially, if you want to look at it that way.
So while they built into the Constitution significant democratic elements, they also built in non-democratic features to protect liberty and prevent tyranny. It wasn't simply that they favored representative government over direct democracy, though they did. It's that they rejected the idea that the majority wins was by definition the just outcome.
All right, now something I want to interject with that needs to be talked about is there is more of an idea than just the mob rule idea. A direct democracy, if we were to have citizens vote on all aspects, right, of government decisions and all that, is completely inefficient. You could never, ever do that. Like the United States today are going to have 300 million people try to get them to vote and put every single decision in their laps. It's not feasible. Not feasible. It wasn't feasible in the 1780s when the United States was basically founded with the Constitution. It's definitely not now. It would be just a logistical nightmare to do that, and to expect people to be able to be educated enough on the issues, which is a different thing in general when it comes to any election, but to be able to do that, because you can make a full-time job, and politicians do, out of understanding laws and learning about them and passing them and debating them. So anyway, but that's one of the reasons too why a republic would be seen as more efficient and maybe better in a modern sense.
Indeed, in what is perhaps the most famous of the 85 Federalist Papers, Federalist 10, James Madison, precisely in distinguishing a democracy, which he did not favor, from a republic, which he did, noted that a crucial advantage of republicanism is to refine the public views by passing them through the medium of a chosen body of citizens whose wisdom may best discern the true interests of the country.
Yeah. Let's remember how elitist, in a lot of ways, the original United States was when it came to politics. Remember ideas about who could vote, right? That was landowners and men, of course, an elite group, because they were fearful that an uneducated mass could easily be able to outvote an educated, people. And that's how they determined people back then. They thought, if you were a landowner, then it must be you're intelligent, you have an education, and do all that. And of course, that's highly debatable. But nevertheless, they're hoping to have more power into the people that they believe are more capable, at least in a lot of aspects. Not on everything, but on a lot of major decisions. Of course, there are plenty of major things that people aren't directly polled on.
And so we have representative government. And more than that, we have a bicameral, that is, two-tiered legislature. A Congress with a highly democratic House of Representatives and a not very democratic Senate.
Well, in terms, I know there's people that love the Senate, love the House more. The House represents the United States by its population, forgetting gerrymandering and stuff like that. And then the Senate is supposed to establish balance among states, whereas the House is supposed to represent balance among the entire country.
Therefore, California, with its massive population, has 52 representatives in the House.
Right.
Wyoming has 1.
But 2 senators.
Yet Wyoming has 2 senators,
right.
The same number as California and every other state. A pure Democrat would say that's unfair. Each Wyoming resident has far more power than every Californian. But a Republican would say,
which is true.
Well, we aren't and shouldn't be a pure democracy. If we were, large population states like California would overwhelm the needs and interests of small population states like Wyoming. That's why that brings in such a separate argument of people talk about things like
the Electoral College, and again, the whole idea that the Senate even exists in the first place. I don't want to get into a ton of that now, but that would be a lot to be able to debate on. It is still debated on and will probably always be debated on unless our current system changes. But if you have any feelings about that, about how you balance large states, small states, and then dense populous areas with least dense areas, feel free to comment down below civilly.
Called the United States of America. Each state has its own separate identity, holds its own separate elections. Just as we don't want one person or small group of people to dominate our government, we don't want one state or a few states to dominate our government.
And a lot of people say, why not? You know, if it's the Senate, like in the Senate, land votes rather than people votes, in a way, like land votes. And then a lot of people, I know, like historically, people will criticize why certain states were even created in the first place. Like, why was there 2 Dakotas, right, rather than 1 Dakota? So you have, like, you know, states that represent a more balance of people, right? Is it like gerrymandering? Like I've heard this kind of talk before, is like how some states were created. Was it like gerrymandering on a national level, that kind of thing? Or like California, should California be 1 state? Should it be multiple states? Right? Brings an interesting thing. You could see Mr. Beat. Mr. Beat did a video and did some things on like, what if there were like 100 states and they all had equal population, or 50 states with equal population. I remember him doing a video on that. You can kind of check that out and kind of get into that, maybe that discussion over there. If the whole state thing needs to be readdressed, or at least how we do government based on states.
A republic is a way of diffusing power, and a brilliant one at that. We see something similar
So here's
in the Constitution's
so
proceedings.
now they're getting into the valuation of it. This is where I've seen Prager do that. Is they'll talk about something, then they'll give their analysis of that, and that's where usually the argument can come from. Because I mean, nothing that they've really described about how things work is incorrect. It's true, but now you get into, you know, certain channels do like valuations of it.
Procedures for choosing a president. An obvious possibility would have been by a national popular vote. The founders
virtually most
wisely
countries
decided
do.
against this option.
So, you know, if you don't know, in the United States, you might have heard of the Electoral College. Basically, states get votes. So whatever however big your state is, you get a certain amount of votes. And if your state has whatever the highest percentage candidate of your state is, how many votes they get, like the highest percentage, they are going to get all the votes that your state has. There's no splitting of votes. A state is all in or only little. And that's why like states like New York and Florida and like California, some of the big ones, can completely change an election, where a lot of the like Midwestern states are very small. They don't have as big of an impact. But you may have, you know, like in like a state like California, I mean, tens of millions of people, and 51% or less, you know, whatever, at most of 51%, let's say, votes for a candidate. 100% of the state's votes go towards that. And a state like California has a ton. It can really push the election. So that means that 49% of the, you know, population there, those people that weren't voted, they are actually going to get outvoted, and actually have get outvoted by other states in a way. It's a complicated mess if you didn't know, but look into it if you are not from the United States, and you'll see it. And especially if you're not from the U.S., let me know what you think. Should it just be a straight just popular vote, where every vote, doesn't matter what state you are, every vote's equal? Or do you like this kind of system of having states and state size have a weigh-in on the elections?
Rather, they created an electoral college to protect the interests of the less populous states. Even today, their decision makes sense.
Okay, so this is turning into a pro electoral college thing. So like I was saying with how the election works for the president, you see over there on the left where California is, that's 55 votes. So 55 votes go towards the president, to the candidate who gets the highest percentage. And that could be, depending on how many candidates are, if there's just 2 candidates, and you maybe have a Republican, a Democrat, maybe it goes 59 or 51, 49, something like that. If it's 51%, all 55 votes go. It's not like, you know, they split those. Some states do. Maine, I believe, will split their votes. but it doesn't matter that much because I have 4. So like sometimes with Maine, you'll see like 3 go to one candidate and 1 vote go to another candidate. So anyway, but this is a highly debated topic and always has been in the history of the United States. And it definitely favors more rural areas. And you generally find in the United States, conservatives are a lot more supportive of the Electoral College because, as you can see on the red-blue map here on this one, for depends on the election. A lot of the smaller states, in fact, most of the smaller states, they often a lot of them do vote for like Republican candidates that align with their kind of beliefs more. So it gives them more power, whereas California could completely remove the political power of the states, of the people, I guess you would say, potentially, if it went that way, of the Dakotas and pretty much that whole middle part, except for Texas down there. So anyway, and not necessarily get rid of their votes, but it would change the balance a lot more. Okay. So anyway, let's keep going.
The interests of the less populous states. Even today, their decision makes sense. As my Princeton colleague, Professor Alan Gelzo, observes, a direct national popular vote would incentivize campaigns to focus almost exclusively on densely populated urban areas. The Electoral College system incentivizes candidates to court voters more broadly, making presidential elections more fully national. So if we understand the system of
interesting thing there of kind of what they're saying, it makes it more national. It makes them more likely to go to rural areas, and that's true. There are some smaller swing kind of states, in places like Iowa, for example, where you will actually see someone campaign, but not in somewhere else like Kansas or something like that. You won't see that, but nevertheless, yeah. But one thing you have to ask is that a problem? Should a presidential candidate be more in Los Angeles County or Miami-Dade County or in New York City? You know what I mean? Should they be there? Because it's just you're reaching more people by going to where the people are, and people are densely. Is that actually a problem? And I think what PragerU is trying to evaluate and saying, yeah, that shouldn't be the case.
Government our founders bequeathed to us, we will see why they preferred to describe it as a republic rather than a democracy. Of course, it has strong democratic elements, but America was not created to be a pure democracy for very good reasons. Those reasons remain as valid today as they were in 1789. We should not go along with those who today are demanding constitutional changes simply because this or that institution or procedure established by the Constitution, say the Senate or the Electoral College, is not democratic. More democratic doesn't necessarily mean better. It doesn't necessarily mean...
Right away, that's so interesting because...
More democratic doesn't necessarily mean better.
I can just hear a bunch of you screaming in your chairs right now. Like, are you kidding me? Because democracy has become such a, it's like biblical in its way. People worship it, right? People worship the idea that people say more democratic should be better, right? Anyway.
It doesn't necessarily mean more just. Our founders understood this. So should we. We have a republic, and we should keep it. I'm Robert George, McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence and Director of the James Madison Program at Princeton University for Prager University.
This video was made possible by a generous donation from the William S. Knight Foundation.
Okay. Final thoughts. All right, kind of final thoughts here. So what I hear a lot of people say is, just like overhearing people of all different sides. A lot of people like the idea of states, right? And having state issues and local things based off of local, I mean by like local issues determined by locals and not a federal government. And usually though, and I don't know if people are yelling past each other when it comes to this, the people that are like, let's just focus on the Electoral College idea, is that in positions that have national influence, then state shouldn't be involved at all. I hear that, I hear people say that's a lot. Where if we're acting the president has has authority over all Americans, then all Americans should have an equal vote regardless of what state they're in. California versus Wyoming, right? And then So yeah, like national positions should be done nationally without state involvement at all. And I hear a lot of people kind of say that, and say that's fine just in those instances, right? If it's a national position, it should be by nations. If it's a state issue, then it should be done by state positions, and trying to find that balance in there. And I think people kind of talk past each other on that. But nevertheless, though, I mean, the analysis that he was doing was definitely, you could see interpreting the, states' rights and states people and rural people having more of a say, and having that be very important, and maybe more important in a lot of ways than urban centers. And it does come down to that urban versus rural. But do you think the way that this analysis, though, only caters to those specifically, I guess you would say, like conservative or Republican voters, because they're the ones that benefit from most? Because with this system, if you don't know, and maybe you're from the United States and you're watching this, it is possible for a candidate to win without winning the popular vote. It's happened before. Okay, it's happened with just a couple instances in recent history. It has happened with President Trump, right? Hillary Clinton won the popular vote there. And then it happened in President George W. Bush's election, when he had fewer votes actually than Al Gore, who ran. And those were instances, and it's happened, and it's favored that side. Now, if this, let's say for some reason, politically speaking, conservatism was more popular in urban areas, and some of those states that we're talking about that vote blue, big ones, California, et cetera, New York, and it was opposite, and for whatever reason, more rural areas were more liberal in that way and might find themselves voting for Democrats. Would you see just a Democrat Party or a liberal version of this, an opposite of PragerU? So is it just going to be supported by the people who feel underrepresented, or underrepresented, upper represented, sorry, or is it actually come down to conservative versus kind of liberal points of view, or what? Is this just, again, a consequence of the people that benefit from the most are going to be the ones that are the biggest proponents of it? Anyway, thanks for hearing through my stuttering mumbles there, but hopefully that made sense there. Rewind it maybe if you need to. But anyway, you can let me know what you think down below. Be respectful to what each other are saying there. And again, I'm an apolitical channel, so I just like to look at stuff like this, give you the teacher's perspective about how kind of this has been talked about in history and how it actually functions in history. And they did a decent job with that here. But I guess where the discussion is where they're doing their valuation at the end. And that's where you can actually talk about stuff. All right, with that, we're going to see you next time. Hopefully. Bye.